Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands with Kelly Bennett podcast. I have a very special guest. I was sharing before I hit record how I found this person first on TikTok, then on Instagram, and then I found their brand, and then I found their brand IRL and purchased it. And now, absolutely a devoted fan of their skincare line. Nina Zilta. Oh, did I pronounce it right?
You were
Zilka?
so close. Zilka. Yep. So close.
Nina Zilka. Okay, my is on the podcast today, and I'm so excited to have you here, Nina.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me,
You're
Kelly.
so welcome. So let's talk about your skincare brand because you're doing things differently. I've been following along on Instagram and on TikTok, and I just really appreciate your fresh take on skincare. But before we actually touch upon what you're doing differently, I would love to hear more about your background because, like I said, I originally found you on TikTok talking about design, and then I found your skincare brand. So give me a little bit more of like your background, and then we'll dive into the brand's background.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I have two very particular passions, which are design and skincare.
Love it.
All connected. So I met my business partner, David, who is like my soul brother, when we were at Pratt Institute for fashion design about 15 years ago. I met my freshman year, his sophomore year. He had started in fine arts and we met as fashion design students and we like immediately connected. We always joke we had this like really weird class that would never exist now, but it was like our teacher had been like friends with Andy Warhol and she had a loft in Soho and she didn't like going to Brooklyn where Pratt's campus was. So we'd all go to her Soho loft to do classwork with her. And she had us doing like large scale sculpture with fabric. It was weird, but
Wow.
I did a very failed project where I wanted to cover a mirror in lace and make a room divider out of it. It didn't work out. But David, David was like, it was as if he were working with me on this project, even though he had his own project. Like he was so committed to helping me get it right. And I remember we'd be in the dorms just like trying to get this mirror laced. And I think we've just always really vibed on working together on projects and have a shared aesthetic and point of view. And I think a shared love of the flow of designing and figuring out complex issues, which is what I think design is. So we graduated from Pratt and we'd already been working together. We had a clothing line, and this was sort of in the like early internet days when I think things were still largely independent. You could kind of do DIY stuff. And so we were selling to some like boutiques on the Lower East Side, and we got awarded this studio space in the Navy Yard that was, I kid you not, $25 a month, which is just hard to
What?
wrap your head around. That doesn't exist anymore, but like that was possible. And so it felt like, let's try to make this work. We're kind of given this insane gift of like really trying to do this, very.
Wow.
Yes. So we did that for quite a few years. And then on the side, I read a book in 2010 called No More Dirty Looks that I'm sure is super dated. I need to like find that book and reread it now because it is why I started my company. But it was about the lack of FDA regulation in the cosmetics industry, which has not actually changed in about 15 years. It will change this year very incrementally, but up until today, anyone can put a product on a shelf. And that's actually something really scary that people don't think about. There is literally no regulation. I could today go, I'm putting this jar of chemicals on a shelf, and there's nothing stopping me in the US from doing that. And at the time, I was reading about formaldehyde in products, synthetic fragrance, which is still in products, that is a known hormone disruptor. The amount of chemicals that are in our products or aren't regulated in products is really terrifying. And like they're not allowed in Europe, they're not allowed in Japan, they're not allowed in most countries, not in Canada, because they are known to cause cancer. And we just have, extreme capitalism in this country above safety. And that just scared me so much. And so I was like, I'm a maker. I'm going to try to make my own products, just in my kitchen for fun, like not a
Right.
business, the same way I do my little design things, like just a hobby. And then David, being David, was like this, I think I made a dry shampoo and like my roommate wanted it. And then all these people started asking for it. And he was like, let's put it in a little cute little bottle and sell it with the clothing line for the holidays. And this was 2012. And then it kind of took off. Like fellow barber, who we still are, they carry us at all their stores now, but they or I think ordered some, and then Urban Outfitters reached out. And again, this was like
Wow.
the internet. So I think they might've even called us or like found, it was like, so
Right.
kind of like, whoa, this is a thing. And then by 2015, I was a little burnt out on the fashion industry and really was like, I think there is a place for making a real skincare line, not stuff in my kitchen.
Mhm.
I just think that like there is no brand that is appealing to me aesthetically, that doesn't feel hyper gendered, that is making truly clean formulas. At the time, it felt very crunchy granola, what was out there, or it
Yes.
felt very goop, which to me felt very like affluent white woman. And that's the only customer at the time.
Mhm.
And David and I were like, where's the brand for us? Like, where is the brand for, cool design people who don't define themselves by their gender and just want like products that work and feel safe and are beautiful, and maybe aren't skincare fanatics, like people
Right.
who just want good skincare so they can do all the other stuff in their life. And so we launched Alder in a soft launch in 2016, I say, hard launch in 2018 with the full line of products. By then we had partnered with a factory. It's a family-owned factory in Jersey we still work with today. Sourced, the raw materials we wanted to use, really honed in on our formulas. And I would say hard launch in 2018.
Incredible. Okay, so there's so much there. I love that. So going from testing a product
Mhm.
to actually finding a manufacturer, what was that process like? Because this podcast is really shining a light on those like awkward in between moments of building an emerging brand and like figuring it out. Like, I started making this thing in my kitchen and now I'm building a brand to this next level to get on retail shelves or to sell on my website and to have a more sustainable practice in my business. How did you go about that? Because it's beautifully executed, such stunning design. I could totally tell you all come from a design background, just like the small little details and the formulation. It's a beautiful product. So, how did you start on that journey? I would love to hear that.
Yeah, that is so, I love that that's the focus of your podcast, because I think that exact in between those jumping points are so challenging. And like, we're in one right now. It's
Mm,
another level, but it is that thing of like, we're still on the smaller scale. I'd love to keep it on the smaller scale, but there's a little more demand. But then we're like, okay, are we making, it's just like, I feel like so much of running a business, especially as a maker, is like the in betweens and trying to figure out the scaling. And it's like,
absolutely.
yeah, I wish it was an exact science. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of awkward points, but when it came to like going from our kitchen to a real place, it really started with the formulations. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but David and I still do all the formulating ourselves. So
Cool.
we really became skincare chemists. And actually, someone tried to hire me out recently, one of our factories. He was like, your products, your formulas are great. Would you do it for me? And I was like, oh, I don't have a degree. I don't feel comfortable. I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome doing that. But like, yes, our formulas are, I mean, at this point, we like, we test them, they're stability tested, they're like, we know they're good. But it did start with that. So like David and I had we got a little place in Bushwick, a little R&D studio, again, for like $1. That wouldn't happen today. And like started with really basic equipment. Like now for our R&D studio, we have, a couple $1,000 pieces of equipment. But at the time we were using a KitchenAid mixer to try to like recreate formulas, and a burner with lab equipment to try to get the chemicals right. But it really, because we're makers, and I really think that if you can make a garment, you can do anything. Making clothing is hard. It's pattern making, it's fabric. And unlike skincare, the pattern is constantly changing per season. So I feel like we had a really innate skill for problem solving. So with the cleanser, for instance, which is an award-winning cleanser that, like, as you said, like people go crazy for it. We have trouble keeping.
Obsessed. Like,
Yes,
I really am. I'm sold. It's my
it's
cleanser.
incredible.
It
I
is.
Yes, I think we had this advantage of being overly confident and not knowing that much. So like David was like, I really like glycolic acid, but I don't like these cleansers that are out there that are stripping my skin. And I know it's a really good ingredient. Can we use it at a little amount? And there was nobody was telling us you can't. We didn't have this formal education to say, no, you can't do that, And we
Mhm.
actually like won a formulation award for it 2 years ago from like, I think it's like the Cosmetics Guild of America. And they were like, it's an innovative formula. And I'm like, it's innovative because we didn't know what we were doing. So when we met, so then with reaching out to factories, that again was really old school and comes from the fashion thing. Most of the people who own factories are not millennials, like it's the same in
Right.
fashion. Often men, they're older. They tend to do things with faxing, which we were very used to from fashion. So I Googled like factories, and luckily, a lot of cosmetic manufacturing happens in New Jersey. Like L'Oreal makes in New Jersey, which like we lucked into. I guess it's East Coast. A lot of manufacturing happens here. So it was, so I called a bunch of factories, and we met with a couple of them, and we took the path to New Jersey, met in person via phone call. And then the company we ended up working with, we really liked them right away. They were family owned business. So we met the son and his father. And now we work with their daughter as well. But they really gave us the runaround, and
Mm.
he has admitted it since. He was like, oh yeah, like I'm sure we were kids. I mean, we were in our early 20s. And I think he was sort of like, oh, you made these formulas. Okay. So they were like, they really made it hard for us. Like they wanted me to like get all the ingredients myself, send them batches. But then it worked, and I remember being like, so we'll obviously have you guys reformulate. Like these are our base formulas, but like, what you're doing. You work with L'Oreal. We'll trust you. And Anthony, the son, actually was like, these are really good formulas. Like if you are able to do these, like he's like, I have no notes. If you're able to do these on your own, you own that IP. I'm going to tell you shouldn't be paying us to own that IP, which was very generous of him. And that's why we work with this company. They're like family at this point. I feel like we have a lot of trust 8 years later. So that's how it happened. And they were willing to start small with us. They took a real risk on us, I think, in doing the amounts that we wanted, which was like a couple thousand, which, a lot of factories we talk to today, it's like still like 20,000 units is a minimum, which is still a lot
Wow.
for us. We do 10, we don't do 20. That's a lot. We're at that weird pain point now of being like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, do we jump to the next thing? But that's how, sorry, that was a very rambling answer, but that's how
No, it was a great answer. And I think it shows the importance, one, of reaching out, Google, making a phone call, jumping on a train, following up, kind of going with like, okay, you kind of have this weird checklist. Okay, I'll go along with it.
right.
And I think that is such a huge part of entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is so much a part of it. Like, yes, you need good branding and a website and cool content, like all of that. But what you just shared to me is really like the heart and soul of being an entrepreneur. So thank you for generously sharing that, because I think we need to talk more about those weird random trips on a train and you're like, I don't know how this is going to go. I think this is a factory, or maybe it's not even anything. I don't know. Let's just go see. I feel like that is such a big part of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Oh my
like
gosh.
those are
Yes.
those awkward
That's
moments of like, let's just see what happens. So you got to the factory. They ended up taking a chance on you. Now you are there. You're building out your products. How did you start finding your story as far as sharing on content? Because you've done a really great job. And being a content creator myself, I really admire, and like to me, I like collect pieces of content, like how other people collect art, like really good pieces of content. I have a little folder in my Instagram, and so many of your videos are saved there. I'm like, this was a great video. And I'll send it to clients too. I'm like, this is really good storytelling, because you're able to connect with people and storytell your brand, but you're also talking about brand differentiators, right? From ingredients that you use, being gender inclusive, being sustainable. I knew the story about your formulation winning award because you had a really great piece of content of like, we're not chemists. We didn't have this background, but this is actually an advantage now because we figured it out and found something that no one was doing. To me, that is awesome brand storytelling. So, how did you find that rhythm to express those points, but also make sure that it felt aligned with your brand?
Well, I would say we're still doing it. Like I
Okay.
really feel like it's easier. Like certainly in the TikTok space, I think we're very much still figuring it out. And I think for us right now, it's about consistency. Like
Mhm.
we basically said, like, I'm going to try to make a piece of content a day for our TikTok. And that has sort of helped me to feel a little less limitations of like, it doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be amazing. Most of the time, it's not going to get eyeballs, but I just need to be consistent. And I think that's been really helpful because then you start building a rhythm, you know?
Right.
I think my first couple ones were really awkward. Like I hate scrolling back to the beginning when we were doing TikTok. It's like, I think it's ugly. I hadn't figured out the lighting, you know, it's just not good, but that's okay because that our goal was not, we're going to make a TikTok that takes off. It was like, we're going to consistently do that. And we do try to do that with new, you know, TikTok's only going to have a lifespan of whatever, and then we'll have to do it with the
Right.
new, but we do try to be like on top of that stuff. Because we're a small brand, we actually don't do paid advertising. It's all
Mhm.
organic for us. And so we really try to be like, how can we connect with the customer as much as possible? So yeah, that's been it with Alder. And then with little design things, that was again just like a little side project that I started for myself. I think I was feeling a little creatively uninspired. And this was, I think I started Little Design Things about a year and a half ago, but what I realized is like I wanted to have more of a presence online, but I don't love sharing really personal stuff about myself. You know,
Mm.
like a lot of and like that is the nature of social media, is like you have to share your life, you know, a day in the life or something. And I that just felt a little tough for me, just with who I am. I wouldn't say I'm like a crazy private person, but I also think that I didn't want to be filming myself all the time. I partly
Right.
wanted to enjoy going on a hike without filming it. And I was like, well, I've always loved diving into, similar to you, other brand stories, other creators. I find it really inspiring. And I was
Mhm.
like, I already kind of do that. I'll make a little video about it. And then took on a life of its own. And I would say at this point, I'm having kind of actually scaling back because I'm like, I'm not getting paid to do this. And I'm not going to become a slave to that either. Um,
Right.
but that's how that one started as well. And I think that has helped me to be more conversational with Alder. I think in both cases, just being conversational, talking the way I would talk to a friend is really a valuable thing because I think people notice they know when something's authentic.
I felt that from you because I first found you from Little Design Things, that series, and it felt very conversational, very much like I was sitting with a friend who's really cool and creative, and I was really enjoying listening to their perspective, and that's what it felt like. So, are you also sharing in the sense that it's practice just to like get the almost like the cobwebs, and I find this from so many content creators and myself included, even if you don't create content almost for a week and you try to do it again, you're like, it just feels so awkward. And so, is it more so just to help you like stay within a rhythm that feels that conversational just so that you feel comfortable expressing ideas? How your personal brand and your own series just became a way to experiment and test so that you can then leverage that for the brand?
Yeah, I think I wish I'd been that strategic in it. That was less conscious thought put in, but 100% at this point, I feel like it's exactly the cobweb thing. It's like,
Mhm.
and you know, like certainly on Alder, no, on both, what are they called? Profiles. On both
Yes.
profiles, on both Alder and Little Design Thing. It's like I don't have very little control over what takes off, right? Like on
Right.
Alder, we have like a face mask one I did that's like doing well. And then almost everything else I do is like nobody sees. And so I think it really, because I'm like, that's not what's making me do it. It's the cobwebs that's doing it every day. So that
Right.
this is practice. It just takes up pressure off and make sure I just do it. And yeah, I think you could feel a little silly talking to camera by yourself in a room. You know, it can start being like, what am I doing? But just
1,000%.
yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that because that's something that I come across almost every single day while I'm working with founders of emerging brands who maybe aren't necessarily content creators or come from a content creation background, but now building a brand includes content. Like it's it it's a non-negotiable at this point unless you have a team that you can delegate it to or a large budget that you could do lots of paid, but you still need organic content, right? So I think the days are gone when people could kind of just like scoot by and not really have to pay attention to it, like it was back in the day. But now it's like you're gonna have to build the skill, and the only way you build the skill is by actually doing it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it there's no other workaround, and I wish
No.
there was, but
Oh,
there
me too.
truly isn't. There truly isn't.
I exactly. And I do think, there have been times when I think Dave and I have felt resentful of like, that is not
Mm,
why we started a brand to become
right,
like rock stars, and like create content. And what has helped me, and this goes back to what you're saying, is that I'm like, but what I do want to do is tell the story of why I created. Like as a maker, as a designer, I do want to connect with my customer and explain this is why I made this product. And when I stopped being, we don't really do meme content stuff, which I'm
right.
totally for if it works. But like what I have found makes me feel satisfied is when I can share stories about why we're doing what we're doing. And so then I find value in it. And so I think if you're not naturally someone who is like, I want to share online, because that's not often why someone starts a company. I think
Right.
if you can about it more as like, this is your pitch, this is your chance to explain what's beautiful about your product, this is your storefront, a virtual storefront. I think that's a really, for me, been really helpful of how I think about it, and made me less resentful of this like need to create
I'm
content.
absolutely. And I'm going to send this podcast interview to clients, founders who are in the emerging brand incubator, and be like, listen to this interview. This is going to help shift a new perspective around content. So I'm totally going to quote you and like send this out many times. So thank you for that. You're going to really help a lot of people. And the next thing I want to ask you is through telling storytelling and through creating content, I think you've done a great job positioning your brand that you are doing things different as far as being gender inclusive and also sustainable. So I would love to hear a little bit more of like, why was that so important to you? Logistically, what did that look like to make sure you were covering those bases? And then the storytelling piece of that.
Yes. So I think in both cases, what I think is really important is that those are pillars of the brand. And
Mm-hmm.
so I truly was never even a conscious choice. When it came to when it came to the sustainability component, David and I were already, the Navy Yard space I was talking about was part of a sustainability incubator. That's where David and I really,
Oh, okay.
yes, and like a real driver for me as a human. And something David and I've always shared, like both of us, I remember connecting when we were young. Like I remember having nightmares at 16 about climate change. So, and it's all kind of coming to fruition now, but like David
Right.
also always been very conscious of that. So our clothing line was very focused on sustainability and using dead stock and things like that. And part of why I left fashion is that I could not find a way to make it less wasteful. And making things is inherently wasteful. Like that's the definition of design, but fashion was hard for me to square with like who I was as a person. And
Right.
skincare felt a lot more like I was creating something that had purpose. For me, I think there's plenty of designers doing it really well. Fashion designers, I just wasn't able to really nail that. So when we created our skincare line, it was inherent that like we're going to use materials that are more sustainable, which I've got many TikToks talking about. We use recycled plastic, which we
Right.
did multiple life cycle analysis, and that is the more sustainable option than glass or aluminum. But the consumer sentiment isn't there. So we do have we're almost like, should we go to glass because consumers think it's more sustainable, and there's pros and cons, but that is why we made that choice. And then environmental working group, that has been my North Star since I read that book about
Mm-hmm.
products. So it was always my goal that we would be environmental working group certified. So almost all of our products are verified. Anything that isn't is in the process of being verified. It's our newest products, our lip balms, the fragrance ones. Essential oils are always a tricky one with percentages to get. You
Right.
test everything. So that is a whole different thing. And then with the gender inclusive thing, that was just, we never thought about it. It's like the brands I liked, like I think sometimes people refer to us as like a millennial ASOP, which I'll take.
Mm,
I think that's a great compliment.
right.
ASOP is gender neutral. Like to me, good, well-designed products do not have a gender, and skincare inherently is not something that should be gendered. As soon as we started learning about skincare chemistry, we learned that skin has nothing to do with your gender identity. Like truly, like it has to do with your hormones, it has to do with your DNA, and it has to do with your environment. So are you in Arizona or are you in New York, are bigger differences for your skin than any way of whether you identify as a man, woman, or non-binary. So we really started working with ingredients that are bringing all skin types to this healthy, balanced place. Things like niacinamide, glycolic acid, hyaluronic acid that are known to be great for a range of skin types. And then the packaging was like, well, why would we, what does it even mean to do gender, pink? I
Mhm.
don't know and also like, why is pink gendered? So it felt so innate to our brand. Weirdly, when we launched, it felt like that was really radical for people. In a way that like, I think being on the coast and being part of my little art bubble, I just didn't realize would be as radical as it was.
What was the feedback that you were feeling like, "Oh, wow, I didn't even realize this was going to be a radical notion of, like, being gender inclusive."
Well, like Target really wanted to carry our line for a while. For a lot of reasons, it didn't work out around price point and kind of the formulas being at the like value that they're at. But they were like, "We love you guys. We just don't know what aisle we put you in." And I was like, "What? What do you mean?
Interesting.
Well, are you for men or are you for women? What?" And I'm like, "Right, right, right. That's a thing still. Like men's skincare, women's skincare, which is again so silly." So like just from a retail perspective, certainly with the bigger retailers, these more mainstream retailers, like little boutiques don't have that problem. But yeah, that's been a thing with mainstream retailers of like, well, where do we put you? And then we did a very small round of friends and family funding when we launched. And it was truly just friends and family, but it's like a lot of older family members who were just so perplexed by the gender inclusive thing. Like they just, I just remember my dad being like, "Oh, it's like Calvin Klein. It's like CK1." And I was like, "Sure, if that's how you need to think about it, like if that is what your brain needs to do is like reference a 90s fragrance to get it, then like go for it. I don't think
Go
this is a
for it.
crazy concept."
That's really interesting, and I think only now, 2023, that there's more conversations about gender inclusivity. For I was just watching some videos from the brand August, the period care brand, and they're really on the forefront of being gender inclusive for a period care brand. And again, you could see when they were just on a morning show, and the anchors were like, "What? Like, what is this?" And I feel like we're only just now having these conversations of like the importance of it and what that really means, and like skincare, it's not something that needs to be gendered. So I really love how that was like baked into your brand from the beginning, and it's only been story told more and really made more normalized over the years of what you've been doing. Let me ask you this. How are you selling to customers? I know I found you at a really great market in upstate New York. One of the most impressive markets I've been. I used to curate markets, and that one, Field and Supply, shout out. They've done a great job.
It's the best. It's the best.
It really, the quality of product there, I was really, really impressed by. Um, are you doing more markets? I also shopped your brand on your website. So like what does that look like for you all? And what's kind of that rhythm that you found of actually selling your product?
Yeah, so we're in about 300 boutiques across the country, and they
Amazing.
yes. And that has been, organic growth through the years. I do most of the reach out. And I would say like majority of these, like, I would say, I always feel like we're in the coolest store in whatever city we're in, like if you're in Marfa, you're going to go to apartment F. If you're, like
Mm.
we've got it covered. If you're going to go to Club Duquette in Alabama. So it's like these cool boutiques that I think just are tastemakers who own them and get what we're doing. And it is truly like, it's not women's boutiques. It's not men's boutiques. It's like a wide range of different places. And then like, as I said, we're in Fellow Barbers, which like, I don't know if everybody knows them, but they are a barber shop, a non-binary barber shop that's also now across the country. And we've really grown with them. And they've been just an incredible partner to us. And then we're at a couple bigger places like Shopbop and Urban Outfitters online as well. And then we sell on our website and we sell on Amazon, and then we're doing markets. So we try to be really diversified in terms of how we sell. And I from the beginning have been very focused on that. We came up at a time when DTC was like the thing
Mhm.
everyone was talking about.
Right.
we're not VC backed, but that was the brands that were around us. And there was this idea that shopping online was going to change everything and everyone was only going to shop online. And now we see, you know, Harry's Razors is now at Target. Casper is now
Mhm.
at, I don't know, one of the mattress companies. It's like, that didn't work. People
Right.
shop all different ways. I shop all different ways. Like some,
Absolutely.
yeah. So we're very diversified in that. And we just started doing the field supply market. And like you said, it was so fun. I again love meeting with our customers in real life. It did make me crave having a physical space. I think that's,
Really?
yeah, I was like, this feels so right. That's a whole new can of worms that involves
Mhm.
staffing and location. So like, we'll see. But I really was like, oh, especially after the pandemic, getting to like meet people, like meeting you.
People.
It's just like, I was like, this is so
Same.
cool, you know, more of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what are some boutiques that you're or shops that you're in New York City, just so I can personally know?
Yes. So we're at Modern Chemist.
Okay.
There's a couple locations. We're at All the Fellow Barbers. We're at Prima Yoga, which is around the corner from me. Where else? We're at a lot of places, but those are the big ones. I know like
Okay.
Barber has all of them, and they're in Soho, they're in Williamsburg, they're in Chelsea Market, you know, and they've got, I think, the full line. So
Perfect. Okay,
yes.
that was just a personal ask. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
So, just to wrap up, I could talk to you honestly for hours. I appreciate your generosity and sharing your story so much. What is one piece of advice to wrap up this conversation that you would share with someone who is a founder of an emerging brand, who's in those beginning, awkward, amazing, but terrifying years of like, what the hell am I doing? How am I going to figure this out? What is something that you would share with someone who's in that space right now?
It may seem counterintuitive, but I would say stay as small as you can for as long as possible. I think
I
we are
love
coming,
that. Tell me
yeah.
more.
Well, I think we're coming out of a time where everyone was parroting this idea of like hockey stick growth and extreme growth and spend, spend, spend. I think we are seeing that crumble. You know, WeWork was the
Mhm.
first one, but like that doesn't work. And like companies weren't making money, and you can only not make money if you're really heavily VC backed. And that, if you want to go that route, if you want to go that route, great. But it does mean that you basically have a boss, which I don't think is why most people start out having a company or
Mhm.
trying to do their own thing. So I think the slower and steadier you can grow, the better. And the longer that you can be making things in-house and really conscious of when, like we just talked about those awkward growth steps. And those are really, you know, sometimes you need to leap. That is going to happen if your company is growing, but like get to the point where it's getting really uncomfortable to ship things yourself before you move to fulfillment. Get to the point where you are like, I can't handle this load. Do not do it when you're like, but when I get to there, it's going to be hard. Get to there first and be a little awkward, because if you can pay yourself first, if you can get your, you know, yourself paid and be doing it, that I think is really valuable. And Alder's learned that the hard way. We've had to let people go over, you know, we never had full-time employees, but we did start outsourcing stuff and realized like we didn't need to outsource as much as we thought we did. And now we're kind of taking it back. And I think that I feel happier having done that and kind of look back at certain things and think, oh, we could have stayed smaller for longer. That would have been okay.
That is such awesome advice, Nina. And I appreciate your, again, transparency and authenticity because that's not necessarily the sexy advice that we hear on the internet. And it really resonates with me as well because that's how I feel the best approach of building an emerging brand is start small, start local, do everything you can until you can't do it anymore so that when you do hire and you do scale, you also know what you want, right? And you're able to communicate what you want so that other people can support your vision. And again, that's not usually the most popular piece of advice that you hear, but to me, it's the realist of like how I've just seen and built brands over the years. So thank you for sharing that. I think that will really resonate with so many people and give them like that deep exhale, be like, I am doing it. This is happening. Okay, cool. And so I just appreciate you sharing that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Of course, I'm happy to. I love getting to share all my mistakes with other people so
No,
they don't make.
it's so good. So what is the website where people can shop, follow on social? Again, I'm telling everyone the face wash, hydration oil, and gua sha. I'm just going to put it out there. It's a must.
I couldn't agree more. And you can
It
get it
truly
all.
is.
Yes, it's aldernewyork.com. Very simple. ALDER, New York spelled out.com. It's all there. We do a lot of bundles. So like if you wanted to get the cleanser and the brush and the soap together, you're going to get a big discount. So I highly recommend you do that. You sign up for the newsletter, you get a discount, all those fun things. And you can also get us on Amazon, which that's the way people shop. So I get it. But yeah, the everyday cleanser, we cannot keep it in stock. So if you see it in stock, get it because it's available.
I love that so much. Thank you so much again for coming on. This was such a great conversation. I'll be sharing it with all of the members of my incubator because I know that this is going to be that, like I said, deep exhale that they're on the right path. And thank you again, Nina, for all you do. And my skin also thanks you.
Oh, your skin looks flawless. Yeah.
Well, I really am a big fan. So thank you so much. I was really in the need for good skincare and it was kind of stressing me out. So finding you and finding your brand has been like a genuine game changer for me. So just thank you on that personal note. Thank you. And thank you for everyone who's listening. This was an awesome conversation. And I'll see you next week on Emerging Brands with Kelly Bennett podcast.